So Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, brother. So excited to be here.
I want to talk to you about a million things around community and school. We were just talking about affiliates a second ago. Tell me what you are excited about in terms of the new affiliate feature on Skool.
I know a lot about affiliates because working at Monday.com, I was working with a lot of different partners, is what we called them, people who were outside of our ecosystem selling the product. It is such a powerful way to grow. And Sam even said it on the call, right? Like the main way Skool is growing is through affiliates. So having something that really pre-qualifies people and brings the right kind of folks into the community is going to be just such a huge unlock, because I can already see there's going to be a lot of things I learned posts in the main Skool community, right? Like when people just kind of open the floodgates and they just let anybody in, I think there's going to be a lot of lessons and other things in that regard. So being able to understand feedback loops and think through, why do people do anything? Well, they really want to get status at the end of the day, right? I've got the Status Game book collection. This book right here is an excellent, excellent read about human motivation and why people do anything. So I think when it comes to what the affiliates can do, it is a great way for the right people to increase their status with the community owners, to also increase their status inside of the community and be kind of known and well regarded. There's so many avenues. We could spend the whole time talking about affiliates, but it's a super powerful feature and nobody is quite doing it. One thing I just want to touch on that they kind of hinted at as well, the logistics of payouts and K9 forms and due diligence is unbelievably hard. Like when they said that, my jaw hit the floor about just how simple and easy it is. At the end of the day, we all have our iPhones, right? It's just like we just turn it on and we use our phones for whatever. But the mechanics behind everything is so complex. But what I always love about Skool is that they just prioritize, how do we make this as leverageable as possible and keep it super simple? So I love it.
Yeah, I was shocked at how simple it was to use. Almost like, what have you
It's
unleashed
crazy.
here? Like, where people are just going to be like connecting in all kinds of different ways, in unexpected ways, in unintentional ways sometimes too, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I think it's going to be pretty messy at first,
yeah,
maybe, but like that's human, you know?
yeah,
And that's what I love about Skool is it's just felt the most human.
yeah.
I work with a few different community owners and some of them are outside of the Skool platform. And there's one that just recently launched like AI comments where you can use AI and
Mm.
enhance your comments. I was just like, wow, Skool would never do something like that. That
Yeah.
is just the complete opposite of what a community is about. So yeah, it's a very special place.
I'm really interested in the idea that you just brought up about status and how that links to affiliates. That is weird to think about. We might talk about our friends or the communities that we like a little bit, but now that there's the affiliate angle, we're really going to be boosting some of each other up. So tell me more about your thoughts around status and affiliates.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole book written about it. So I could go into all sorts of different things. But what drives people, right? Just as like, 40,000 foot view, right? Let's take it out big picture. What drives humans to do anything? We have the health, the wealth. What do all those things really chunk up to? Status. You want status with the people you care about, status with the people that you want recognition from. You want status from your peers, right? Health, wealth, money, all of those things chunk up to this. So when you think about having a group where somebody that you really respect or look up to or just want to be closer to, people have often talked so much, and I've seen it now in myself as I've invested more and more in my own education, being a part of communities. I've spent just a ballpark, I think last I checked, like 30 grand on Skool communities in different aspects of coaching and other things. And the value that I've gotten has been immense. But one of the most crazy things that everybody said, but I just couldn't realize it, was being able to invest in yourself and understand what that looks like means that you now know, oh, other people are going to be willing to do this. And now I can get into the right room with those people.
Mm.
And that is unbelievably huge. Being able to be in the room with people, and all money is a tool, right? And so what some of these communities do, what are the things that I've struggled with too, in terms of like pricing communities, that's a whole nother tangent, right? But being in that place where it's, oh, this is the right crowd because they're using money as a tool to get into this group of
Right.
people. So whoever runs that community is generally going to be somebody pretty special, right? You've got the Evelyn Weisses, the Calvin Hollywoods, the Will Renairs, right? You guys are going to be these established community owners that people are going to want attention from. What's a great way to get somebody's attention? You bring in great community members to that community. So if you create this feedback loop for people where it's not about the money, but it's about the mission, right? Then you are going to be able to have this unbelievable group of folks. And I've joined communities where it's been a guru community. One of my first communities, actually my first couple, were all me being a guru. And that seems like it's going to be a great sort of thing as a coach or a style of community. It's going to be a great thing. But what ends up happening is you just get these, yeah, thanks, appreciate you. You don't get engagement. You just get a value post and a bunch of people that say, cool. But when you actually join the community for the other people and not the community owner, it is such a powerful lever. And so anyway, I could dive into it a lot, but status and affiliates is going to be the big game. Once the dust settles, which, I mean, maybe it's already doing so, I need to kind of like look and see. But you're going to see so many people say, oh, actually, when I understood that my community members wanted to get closer to me, that they wanted to get closer to the right kinds of people, that we put systems and processes in place to make this simple, right? Even simpler, this onboarding part of the community where if you want to be an affiliate, here's all the benefits that you get, all the tools that you get. All you got to do is talk to somebody and send them this link, and you get 2 or 3 people in this amazing community. That community owner is going to be paying real close attention.
Let's talk about passing status, Matt. I like that idea about the guru. I think a lot of people build communities partly as status, right? A lot of people want to be influencers, want to have that kind of influence over a group, have that status over a group. And then when you get into this community model and you realize that like people aren't necessarily there for the guru, they're there for the other players in the space who they want to connect with and have real relationships with. And not only that, but now you kind of have to level other people up because you want to get those affiliate relationships too. So you're kind of passing that status to other people. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll change the Spider-Man quote a little bit, right? With great status comes great responsibility. And as you have this community, the same thing as having a team, right? I ran a team of up to 87 people at one point, but generally in that kind of like 80 range. One of the biggest mistakes that I perpetually made when I was hiring people was actually not taking action on removing the people who weren't a great fit and having those tough conversations. And when it comes to community, the stakes are like a little bit lower, but generally they're going to be in that range of like, they're almost a team that you work towards when you get to a certain status and a certain degree of level inside that community. I've been in communities where I'm like, oh, that person's here. Okay, I need to take this more seriously because that person's status now pulls into your community. And so when you think about free and pay and all of these different things and who these individuals actually are and what they're known for, it's all a status game. We are all trading status amongst our peers, amongst each other, and how we can leverage and best utilize that. Not only is it making sure that the right people stay and keeping them involved in the community, it's making sure that the ones who aren't a good fit can either pre or post qualify and say they're not right for it. There was one community that I was in recently that I joined and I thought it would be great. And I actually disqualified myself. And I said, hey, I made a mistake. I am not going to be a good community member here. I'm going to be just another number and I'm not going to be contributing. And I had to do that a bunch, by the way, because I think one of the fun things that happens in Skool is you just over-index and you're like, join everything. So I had that moment where I had to go to a few different community owners, even some paid ones. And I was just like, look, here's the story. I screwed up, right? It's almost like it's not you, it's me to some degree. But those conversations were super rewarding. Multiple people told me, hey, you're the first person that's ever actually given me some context about the fact that you aren't a good fit. And one guy was even like, hey, this actually helped me realize that I need to qualify people better just by bringing them in, not just letting anybody into my free community, for example. So how that plays in to what you were doing is like you have this hidden level, right? In video games, we call it like MMR, right? Matchmaking rating, where you don't actually know what your number is, but you're going to get paired with people who are your skill level sometimes. Different games use that sort of thing. And so when you have a healthy community where you've got people of varying degrees, but they're all trying to work towards that same thing, and you help them understand you are this, we are looking for this, this is the kind of people that you want, so go and bring them in. What is the hardest thing any community has to deal with? In my opinion, the absolute hardest thing is attention and traffic. And this solves that to a very high degree when you invest the right time and resources into it. So as a community owner, I had somebody that I was speaking with actually just on the call before this, and they said, I actually don't want a community because it's going to take way too much time. I have to invest so much time into it. And that was a great discussion because I realized that they weren't going to be a great fit for working together. But in that sense, you need to understand that not only will communities take a ton of time initially, when you build it right, it'll eventually run itself, right? It's not going to be something that takes a ton of your time. It's not like you could be totally hands-off, but systems and scale exist. It's a solved problem. There's a guy named Lloyd Lobo who created the Traction Conference. He used it as a lever for growing his business by getting these developers in the right room, but then he eventually created this Traction Conference. This conference has 100,000 people that are in its orbit and ecosystem attending it. So it's not like people haven't figured this out, right? If you have a community of a couple hundred people, it can feel like a lot. And that's because you might not be leveraging what's happening inside of that community to do some of the hardest pieces of it. Growing it, managing it, these are all solved problems. And when you understand status, that could be another lever for you to get people involved, not necessarily monetarily.
So you're talking about getting that traffic and attention problem solved through the door, like figuring out who should be in, who should not be in, and controlling kind of the status of the community itself or the space. Is that kind of part of what you're
It affects
getting at?
everybody. It affects everybody. Because also when you have a community of tight-knit people, you want people to feel in, that they're a part of something special. And so that is inherently status-based. So in that sense, you also want to make sure that the right people are coming in and contributing and being a part of it.
Right.
Because what happens is there are going to be, again, these like invisible kind of like mechanisms where somebody goes and posts something that doesn't make as much sense, or somebody goes and pitches something and then it's never dealt with. There are all of these moments, these little small moments where in the grand scheme of things, those things don't have a huge impact or maybe almost no impact. But what happens is everybody looks for the silver bullet. What grows and what kills entrepreneurs is actually understanding that it's just thousands of little BBs, right? That could either hurt you or could hit the target that you're trying to hit. And you hear it all the time in a lot of these established owners. It's an endurance game. So going and growing slowly and understanding who your ICP is, but also making it very clear to your members who they are and why they are a part of your ICP.
Right.
We think it's really obvious, but it is so hidden. I was talking with a few members of a community that I help work with, and they were like, we want to be affiliates, but like, who are we even going after? And I was like, oh my God, I thought we did a good job of this. We had done nothing in regards to this, and they don't even know. So again, you go and talk to people, you see that they want this status, but they might be missing key ingredients to make it happen.
So tell me then, how does the free community as a funnel thing play into this? I want to know, do you think that this kind of idea about making a free community and pulling in traffic from everywhere is the right way to get these smaller status-based communities? Is it possible to connect a giant funnel like that with one of these smaller communities, or how does that model fit into this?
It's a great question, and I've been thinking about it a ton because I've had free communities. I have been a part of a bunch of free communities. I work with folks who have free communities as part of their funnel. And I so often find that the free communities are kind of useless. And the reason why is because everybody is just driving to that end result.
Yeah.
Instead of understanding that the free community, that what community, should be an introduction, but taking care of it and making it have its own inherent set of values is going to be critical. I've joined Skool communities that have 500, 5,000, 10,000 people, and it is dead, like dead inside. And what does that do? Well, now I equate that with the creator not caring, And I think they have inherently lower status. Now, they're probably crushing it and doing well and not paying attention to it.
Mhm.
But how does that reflect upon them and the work that they're doing? I absolutely agree that there is going to be an important part of that funnel. And I think free to paid is definitely one of the better ways to be able to grow. That's going to be general advice. What you would want to understand specifically about this is the free community can be the what, the paid community can be the how. I learned that from Calvin Hollywood, right? And he does that excellently in terms of his communities. And his communities are very large. But he pays attention to both aspects of this and now has a team to help run that. A lot of folks on Skool right now might not necessarily have a team. So you need to be very intentional about what does this free experience look like
Right.
and end at. Because
Right.
you don't want to just shove tons of free value into that free community because people are just going to get lost in there. You need to have a model for ascension. But that piece of it usually gets laid by the wayside once somebody actually has a paid community that's growing.
Yeah, this is why personally I've tried running the two communities at the same time, the free and the paid, and it's very hard as an individual to try to build a culture in two different places at the same time. It's very hard, I think, for people who are trying to just bring traffic from different outside sources into a free community while also focusing on how can I pay my school fees, how can I pay my rent even maybe, and try to hold these two at the same time. I think that idea of starting with the free community and really developing the culture there, I wish that more people had patience to do that.
Yeah. I'll just dive in a little bit more and give some kind of tactical advice of what I've seen work. When it comes to Skool and what options are out there, I don't think there is necessarily a reason to rush into a paid community either, because you can have a free community that could grow and be a baseline for this. And depending on the kind of model that you're setting up, there's low ticket options where you have a paid community and maybe it's under $100 a month. But there's also the high ticket sort of ascension where you don't necessarily have to do it that way. You could also just have a free community that you use as a funnel to grow into your high ticket coaching, high ticket offer, etc. What often works for coaches and what I have seen work really, really well right now, and I've been a part of a few of them, is when you have a very specific set of knowledge in a course. And I'm actually not a big believer in courses, but what I have found that's really powerful is that course inherently being a part of the community where people get together and then talk about those specific things, those specific modules or the specific tasks. And you get the right people in the right room who are all thinking about the same kind of problem. That's where I often see it breaking down. Because what you want to have in a paid community is you want to have people who are all in the same kind of class, right? The free community could just be kind of like the lobby, the area where people come in and get introduced to Skool, they get introduced to you. But think about how we actually have Skool set up around the world, right? You have primary or kindergarten, right? You have first grade, second grade. Those are all different rooms. Those are all different sections. So in fact, one of the things that you could be thinking about here is once they've graduated and they go from being in America, it's like high school to college or university abroad, right? Those are going to be two distinct groups of people. And that's going to be based off of where they are in their journey. So the free community could be, hey, this is primary school, this is kindergarten, this is where we are talking about these things. And then the premium community is, here are the graduates, here are the alumni, here are these other groups of folks. And you could have 4, 5, 6 communities where you grow people through that process.
Right.
But what I often see people never doing, and what I think is very important, is when you look at posts in a paid community, for example, and it's just a basic question, delete that post, copy it for them, and tell them, hey, can you post this in the free community?
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
And when you see something that's super advanced, somebody who's really technical, and they're asking a very complicated question about how to do something for just them, delete it and say, hey, you should join the paid community. This is a little bit too advanced. Yeah, this is a little bit too advanced for where we are at right now.
Yeah.
Right? You are a 5th grader and you're playing with the first graders. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So that kind of intentionality is so often what I see missing. Because I've joined so many of these communities on Skool, I had to scale it back. But I saw there wasn't that level of attention and intention for either one of those things. Either they were paying a ton of attention to one and not the other, or they just only cared about their paid and their free was just a vehicle. And that's what most people on Skool are doing right now.
Yeah.
It's just a pit stop on the way to the paid experience.
Yeah.
But so much value happens when you are that person that increases somebody's status and you do so in a highly valuable free way.
Yeah.
Guess what? They're going to be thinking about you. And this is, I think, the most important thing anybody can be doing in their niche. How do you become that one word guy or gal? I'm the editing guy. I'm the community girl. I'm this and that. Because people often only have the ability to remember one or two people in a category. So why are you not trying to think through what is the best and most painful thing that I could give and just wrap that and consolidate that in free, and then look at paid ascension through that mechanism of the people that go through the program and graduate through it. There's a lot of really great tactical things that you could do in that regard, but that's how I think about your status as a community owner and the status of the individuals. Everybody's paying attention to it. We just don't talk about it.
I want to dive a bit more into that idea of how to motivate the people in the free community.
Yeah, I got another fun topic on that in relation to affiliates, because there's so many free strategies now that you could do when it's curated and paired with the right people. It's awesome.
I want to talk about how to motivate people within the free community, because I think that you were really touching on something really super interesting there in terms of how maybe people who are trying to make money off of this thing, who are trying to monetize, and their focus is on how can I get people from the free to the paid. And then they're realizing that their free communities are dead. And they're like, how do I get these people to engage? And sure, part of it is the obvious thing about the owner has to show up, or you have a team to build it, or you need to put more energy into it. Otherwise, you're not going to get it out. But I think something more subtle that you were kind of getting at, or that you were moving around, was the status idea within the free communities. And maybe if there are ways of helping people who are in that free community realize that is their opportunity to be building status within the platform, to be building relationships. I know that there are some people who might want to get jobs within Skool, like doing operations or even engagement or something like that, that might be taking that more seriously. Like, how can I level up in that community? How can I get status? How can I connect with the owner more? But I'm wondering, how can the owners of these free communities really be encouraging that kind of behavior and helping people in their free communities level up and build their own status within those networks?
Yeah, it's a super, super interesting topic. I think so much of what happens here really gets lost because people, but I'm so guilty of this, right? But people chase the perfect answer. And the reality is, you're never going to know the perfect answer, right? Nobody goes onto the field and plays at 100%, right? Mm-hmm. They just do with what they can and they make action happen. So when you think about meaningful engagement and what that looks like, it sounds really obvious, but kind of bear with me here. Why do these people join these communities? You might have an idea. You might even have a question that asks them what they are trying to do and trying to achieve. But when I think about the people who have given me so much that I am just like, I will fight for you. I love your mission. I believe in what you're doing. Those people that inspire that for me are the people that gave me something that I felt I should have paid for. Mm-hmm. And why do I feel that way? Well, because it helped me unlock something, transform something, adjust something. It gave me a meaningful mechanism to look back on, even if it was just an insight or something tactical, tangible, anything. When I look back on those creators that did that for me, it was very simple. They generally asked me what I was trying to do, and they got involved in making that happen. Or they took my experience and just said, right here, look at this case study, this module, this classroom, this experience, and give you a blueprint from going from A to Z for whatever that small piece is. But the cool thing about life is that we are always dealing with these challenges, and that human touch, the thing that matters the most. We talked a little bit about it earlier, where like some of these platforms are actually going out and investing in bringing AI into what they're doing. The cool thing about communities is that a loyal and understanding community is going to be the highest leveraged, highest value thing that you could possibly have in the future. It is going to be the premium asset.
Yeah.
human attention and people's respect of you and your status,
Yeah.
that's how you monetize without losing your soul. So when I think about what you could do to engage, there's a ton of tactical different things. But overall, they all kind of chunk up into making your community the expert and giving them the platform to be able to speak about these things. Because
Right.
when you come in as the expert,
Right.
you shut down conversation. When you come and ask for help with something that is in the area where people could say, oh, I know. Oh, he's asking for help. She's asking for help. Of course, I want to increase my status with them and help them do it.
Right.
And so I find that the best creators aren't going out and telling you value post, do this, do that, achieve these things. The best creators are the ones that inspire the right kind of conversation. And those comments are just insanely valuable. Like when I go to something on Skool and I see fire emoji, I see cheering GIF, right? I don't see any actual comments. Those are the things where I'm just turned off. And some people can get excited about that. Sometimes it's fun. Like you don't want to always be super serious. But one of the things that I am working on measuring for the people that I'm working with right now is how long are the actual comments that people are engaging, right? This isn't social media. You don't want just thumbs up or smiley face or whatever. You want people to actually engage and comment. Some of those things are okay, but if that's all you get, that's not a community, that's social media.
Yeah. I think, like you said, there's like a balance. There's a way of using both. And if you don't have any of the long comments, there's no connection, or there's like a very surface level connection, maybe. I remember specific threads, like Ryan doing a thread where it was guess the number that I'm thinking. And it was just people writing numbers fast, really fast, right? And that creates culture too. And that is a genuine conversation. That's a genuine connection that's happening there, even though the text is very short. So I think that's also one of the interesting things about the platform and also online communication in general is that there's not a specific formula, because sometimes those longer posts can just be people trying to be a thought leader or trying to use that opportunity to get attention and have people using that as like a mini funnel or something. So it's about the intention. And somehow I think that we can sense that. I don't know if you get that
Of
feeling,
course.
but
No, we absolutely can sense it. And that's the other thing when it comes to status, which I love that this conversation has revolved all around that. By the way, again, The Status Game, excellent book that covers this topic in great detail. The whole summary of which is people really only care about their status. When you think about what that looks like, you can suss it out. You can kind of always tell what somebody is after, generally. It's not something that's like hidden behind the veil. Based off of the comments that you see, you could really tell. One of my favorite things to do, by the way, that I see more and more people doing now is just going out, being authentic and trying to help people. And then whenever they click on your profile or they go to your website or they go to your YouTube, you have this if you need help section or like if you're ready to work together section. And I see those more and more. And I love that because it's then people choosing to opt in. Obviously, you can't just lead a business that way. You have to get to a certain level of status before something like that will work very effectively. But a simple example that I think matters the most, and this is something where you could, as a community owner, you could message a couple of people a day. It's not that hard to actually just go and reach out to somebody. And if you don't have the time or capacity to do that because you're busy running the business, you probably have enough money to afford paying somebody to do that for you and build that human connection. I do a lot of cold email. And I used to do the kind of cold email where it was, let me blast 10,000 people a day with this message. And if I get 0.01% conversion, I'm still having enough people come down the funnel where I'm booking calls every day. And what I've changed to doing is instead actually going in, trying to sound as human as possible and reaching out to these people who have never heard of me before and just saying, I think you have this problem. Here's what that solution looks like. Raise your hand if you're interested. And I do it by telling jokes and having fun. And I keep it short and sweet. But multiple people now that I've asked, I was like, why are you working with me? Like, I just emailed you out of the blue and what came out? They all said the same thing. I could tell that you were a person.
yeah.
I could tell that you were a human being. And you just really sounded genuine, like you wanted to talk about this, that you care. And when you think about whatever it is that you were talking about, that you care about so much, people can see it. They can feel it.
Yeah.
If you are not obsessed with that topic, people aren't going to be drawn to you to talk about that kind of thing. And that's by extension, either killing or growing your free community. Because if you have this extension, this public version that you just don't care about and people can see. And no matter how good the reason is or how justified, if you have a super great YouTube channel, but you haven't posted in 2 months, if you have a great free community, but you don't go there at all, people pay attention to this stuff. It matters. And so when you think tactically about what you can do to actually go in, engage with people, it is not some crazy thing. Here's how I can leverage the right people to tell these stories. One of the communities that I'm working with right now, he had this little opt-in form that people could just say, hey, what are you like really proud of? And that was such an amazing bank that we then scheduled multiple workshops with these people because, hey, you're really good at this SEO thing. Why don't you just come in and talk about that? And I'll just come and ask you a few questions. And the community loves it because they get to learn about John or Jane. They get to go and be involved in these sorts of things. And again, having so much better than an email list, you have this amazing free community, but you're not taking advantage of it and you just don't care. Calvin talks about this all the time, Calvin Hollywood. I'm a big fan if you can't tell. Why? Because he just gives so much amazing value out for free. But he talks about these people who are on the platform and they are standing outside the shop saying, ding, 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 come into the shop, come into the shop, come into the shop. And even though they bring 50 people into the shop, 40 people leave, they're like, well, I still got 10.
Right.
Come into the shop, come into the shop, come into the shop. That all affects the status. You can't unmake those things.
That's true.
That is something that will stay with you. Like you think about people that have, this is general customer support 101. If somebody has a bad experience, they're going to tell 5 people about it almost always, right? Somebody has to have 10 to 20 good experiences before they go and tell one single person about those kinds of things. So having that level of gravitas and understanding that you just don't go create a community to create a community, you actually want to transform and help people, that will grow your status. The best way for you to be growing your status as a creator, as somebody who cares about a personal brand right now, is to just give relentlessly. It is not a silver bullet. It is not a secret. You go out there and create that culture for people that they understand that you are a giver of knowledge and insights and action. That stuff comes back to you, right? To take all the woo-woo out of it, right? But you go out and give and people will come to you. I'm so grateful that I've had this conversation with so many folks where they're just like, this conversation was so valuable. How can I help you? I've been hearing that over and over and over again. And it's simply because I come in with no agenda other than I know a little bit about your problem and I have a lot of these potential solutions. So let's make it work for you specifically and bring this all together. And my status goes up.
I want to get into something maybe a little evil. I don't know.
Let's do it.
I don't know.
I love, that's a great intro. Yeah, you got me intrigued.
I don't know if it's evil. Okay, let's roll it back. So it's not so evil, but being direct with people who you can see their motivations. Like, how do you feel about that? Because we're in this weird dance sometimes with this online space where everybody has some product or something that they're trying to make people aware of in a way. So there's a balance, between being like subtle about or honest about what we're doing and being able to talk about it. And then there are sometimes people, or even within ourselves, temptations to maybe try to weave people into our web or move them down our process. And when you can see that happening, when you can see people, oh, this person's just trying to sell over here, but maybe the other person doesn't catch on, or maybe they're new here. How do you go about that? Do you think that there's a place for being direct about what's happening, or do we need to be like under the surface and subtle, like about our communications? What do you make of that?
It's such an interesting question. So you're right. Everybody has something that they need to be able to do, right? They want to sell, they want to make money, they want to provide. It generally always revolves around that. There's always an agenda in that sense. I have found in my experience that being direct is so much better. And that's why I like cold outreach. I got started actually doing door knocking. I used to sell life insurance door to door. I was 22 years old. Doesn't get much more direct than that, especially in the Texas heat and summer with the suit that I bought from the thrift shop down the way. I had to be pretty direct. I was like, this is what I'm doing. You interested? Right? And that was for the rare few that even opened the door. And especially for those that opened the door without like some sort of weapon, right? So it's something where as human beings, like we are built for social connection. This is why community is going to matter so much over the next few years as AI just gets crazier and crazier. Being direct when you are selling is, in my personal opinion, the best thing that you can actually be doing. Because if anybody intuits or thinks that you are trying to sell them or get something out of them, which by the way, trust is fundamentally dying. right? And nobody trusts
Yep.
anybody anymore. Why? Because everybody has some agenda of something to make.
Yeah.
So that's why I like either you are direct, or at the end of whatever it is that you're doing, where it makes sense, which is not going to be in the comments. It's not going to be in somebody else's community. It's not going to be in these general areas. You have to understand that layer of consent and opting in to that experience, right? Because what will happen is that when you genuinely engage and work with people, they will go and find you. They will go and figure this stuff out. And if you start talking about the problems and the solutions for those kinds of things, the watering hole, right, where your ICP is, it will work. People will come to you. But the problem is that so many people don't know how to engage, or they don't trust the process because they need fast results, that they aren't in a financial position where they can be patient. And that's what kills, I think, so many folks, is they go out there and they just push and push and push, and they don't understand that the best way for you to push is actually to pull. And when you pull the right kind of people in and you figure this out, that is when you get so much results that you can't even handle it. Go ahead.
I hear what you're saying. What I really want to get into is the evil bit, which I think is the communicating with other people who you are seeing doing that.
Oh, you mean like actually saying, hey, you are trying to do this. How do you engage with that person?
Yeah, because I feel like the honesty, we're missing that honesty in this kind of online education or online whatever sales space. And so how do we get into that kind of honest discussion with other people where it's like, you're doing something that's a little bit conniving here?
Yep. My style. And I'm not going to pretend like this is easy. I struggle with it too. In fact, I actually have a conversation that's coming to my mind that I've been putting off because I don't want to have this level of discussion. It is so important for you to be able to have focus on your business. And how does that relate to this? If you're thinking about this all the time, or you're always in mind with this person and you always have this going on, you are going to be distracted.
Right.
And people appreciate that level of honesty. The right people, I should say, appreciate that level of honesty, and the wrong people will leave your orbit.
Right.
Like when you see that kind of thing happening, what is the absolute worst scenario that could possibly happen? Absolute worst threat. Let's think about it. Somebody comes into your community, they start pitching. You say, hey, that's not what this is about. Please don't do that. They keep doing it. You say, look, you got to go. What's the worst thing they could do? They could report you. They could report your community. They could go to your YouTube and dislike everything. They could go and do all these other things. And that sucks. It absolutely sucks. And it absolutely happens. It's not like that's not going to happen. But in the grand scheme of things, when you are thinking about the long game, because so much of what we're doing is day to day, but so much of what we are all trying to build on Skool is going to be years, if not decades in the future of where we get like that exponential reward for what we are trying to do. Because again, we're all here trying to pitch something, you know? We're all here trying to make stuff work. Are you going to really remember that one person that did that one thing? Maybe if they're like that crazy. But guess what? You are taking that shield for your community. Because if that person goes and does that to other people, if that person goes and gets those comments that don't get removed, or you can't see them, these are the things that degrade your community. And I'm just thinking about this one moment where I had somebody who I loved working with. I loved it. They were so good, but they were just so not a fit for the actual team. And they weren't able to pay. They just had a different kind of attitude. And another thing that I was like, look, I just struggled and struggled. We were pretty small at the time. We were about maybe 70 people or so in the whole company. And I talked to their CEOs about it, and they said, you are hurting them. And I was like, what do you mean I'm hurting them? It's like, you are actively hurting them by not giving them the opportunity to be in a place that is best for them. You're keeping them here when you know it's not going to work. And again, I'm not going to pretend it's easy, but I think about that so much when I think about all the people in my orbit, right? I have my digital gravity here that I am working towards, and all of these people. So who do I want to bring close? And who do I want to send? Go find another star system, right? Those kinds of things matter immensely. So to speak to the tactical piece of this, I would always say that even if the worst case scenario happens, it is so much better to be direct with this person and deal with this problem and actually address it. And you will find more often than not that because you took that brave step to do this, that other person will receive it. And maybe they receive it well, maybe they don't. But how does that affect you in your future for what you're trying to build? If they receive it well, great, you guys move on. If they don't receive it well, You move on and keep doing your thing. Ultimately, if you just let this sit and fester, again, when you think about as a entrepreneur, a solopreneur, somebody who's trying to build a community, if you don't have super clear tactical focus and prioritization, what's the one thing that you're going to do today that's going to make a big difference? And sometimes it might be, I'm going to message this person and tell them, see you later.
And what if this is happening not necessarily in your own community, but in a more public space like Schoolers or some other type of more broader industry space? Like, how do you negotiate with it there?
Let's say it was like a comment, like you don't have control to delete it or something like that, right? Like there's a comment, there's a confrontation. Grace always wins. When you understand and say, look, I appreciate these points. I actually had this great discussion. I called it an argument, but I used enough emojis and other things to express this. But when Hormozy did that talk about manifestation and he worked with those guys that were running that community, I loved that discussion because so many people were like, is mindset real? Is it not real? Like, how do we think about it? What do we do about it? And that was such a fun place to engage in all of those different threads because you had so many people with such diverse opinions and thoughts. And I had a discussion with one guy and I was like, hey, I disagree with what you were saying. And I want to engage with you publicly here in this other person's community. And I just want you to know I'm here for it. I'm having a good time. But this is why I disagree.
Right.
And I was sitting there with my wife. We were eating lunch. And I was like, ooh, hey, I got a reply for this thing. Do you mind if I check? I want to be intentional with you and I spend time with you. But can I check this? And so we went through it. And he made enough good points where I was like, I'm wrong. Actually, I see that now. I see that now. And props to the creator of this community because they created a space for us to be able to do that. And props to this other person for saying, hey, let's play. Let's engage in that regard. So when somebody comes at you, it's often the best opportunity to turn them into somebody who could be your most powerful advocate and ally. Because when you respond with grace and you try to understand where they're coming from and you don't take them down, you're not like, oh, well, obviously your parents didn't love you or whatever. Like you don't denigrate them.
Yeah.
You say, look, I feel like you're coming at it from this angle. And from that perspective, you can then have a better conversation, right? You can say, oh, this is what you're trying to do. And if I understood it correctly, this is what I would say to that. Because then that shows that you don't understand, number one. And number two, that you want to reframe that conversation and take back control. Why does anybody get angry? Let's just look at a genuine, like typical person. Why do they get angry? There's no such thing as losing your temper in that situation, in my strongly held belief. There is that person losing control of the situation and choosing anger as a tool to get back that control. So when you're thinking about these public places where these conversations are happening, grace always wins because people see that and they're like, wow, I would have popped off, but you handled it so well. And some of those people that I have dealt with in that situation before have become great friends. And we didn't necessarily agree or have a commonality in that front. So all of these, at the end of the day, I would say what you are presenting is an opportunity.
There's one thing that from this conversation that I feel like I would be missing if I didn't go back to. When we're talking about building communities before and we're talking about creating a culture and being in the right place, sometimes with people who are willing to invest in themselves and finding these circles, I think that one of the things that really excites me about Skool the most is how there are all kinds of tiny little communities with really interesting people in it that you might want to be in proximity with, right? You might want to be around some of these people. And the idea of like building these kinds of little smaller spaces, I think is very interesting. Maybe somebody has a big vision for their community that they want to make. But I think in Skool, I'm finding that it's really important to not overlook those small spaces because the kind of culture that can be created in something that might seem like a joke or not something that's going to be the thing that makes you $1 million is where you can actually connect with some people who can really help you move further down your path. Do you have any thoughts around those kinds of smaller spaces, maybe how to navigate them or how they fit into the bigger ecosystem?
So that's where, in my view, the thing that comes up the most is you really need to understand where you want to go. Because it's not about the destination. It's not even about the journey, I would say. It's about the friends that you make along the way. And what is a community? At its core, what is a community? It's you, it's me, and another person. 3 people. That's all it takes to have a community. So when you very clearly understand where you want to go, and every day you wake up and you say, this is the bottleneck that I have between where I need to go and the next step of what I need to do. And again, sometimes we make it sound super simple, right? Like right now, the most important thing in my life is I got to clean the kitchen. I got to clean this kitchen. But that could mean wiping the countertops, scrubbing the floor, cleaning the dishes, unloading the dishwasher. There's all these different steps for things that you need to be able to make it happen. When it comes to navigating these communities, there might be a community of 3, 4, or 5 people, but they are all going through the exact bottleneck and constraint that you were going through at that moment. And that's where you find such amazing high impact people. I have a few that I could think of in terms of like people that I've met in some of these smaller communities. The thing that I love about Skool, I get asked this actually a lot now that I'm talking to people about community building. And they're like, why Skool? Why not Kajabi or Circle or any of these other places? And there's a whole bunch of reasons. But one of the ones that stands out to me the most is that the kinds of people that it attracts all feel like my kind of people to a great degree. And when I think about what Sam and the team are all doing to try and build this platform, it's about making sure that those small spaces have a place to not have to worry about all of the technical and infrastructure pieces. They can just focus on being together and focus on building and doing something together. What I'm hearing about this, and let me know if I'm in that right direction, is it really comes down to being so good at understanding your priorities and your bottlenecks that you can see, okay, this community is actually going to help me move the needle.
Right.
Because otherwise you'll get like I have, where you join so many communities, you're like, I'm completely over-indexed. I'm not being a good community member for a majority of these things.
Right.
I had to go and whittle it down and say, these are the 5 communities that I care about the most. And I'm going to be active and be a good member in. And those are the ones where I want to get status. I want to find and achieve the status of other people that have been in those communities. I want to be more around the people that find those things very important. That's how I feel about navigating communities of all shapes and sizes on Skool.
Right. And I'm curious now about that kind of fluidity of movement, because you're talking about a community as answering a bottleneck that you have maybe. And I think that there's a place for like knowing that, okay, these are my people. I'm going to be in this community for many years, maybe even a decade. Like you can envision some communities like that. But there might be other communities that you're like, this is a piece of the puzzle that I need for this specific moment in my life. And I need to be in here now, and then maybe not for that long. How do you imagine moving through Skool and through different communities in terms of solving bottlenecks? Do you have any thoughts around that kind of fluidity?
It doesn't have to be always around business too. I think the thing that's coming up for me when I hear you ask about that is there's this concept of the first place, the second place, and the third place. And what's really missing in society right now is that third place. The first place is generally your home, right? The second place is where you work, which that also has been compromised a lot because a lot of people are working remotely and are not working in an actual physical office anymore. And then there's that third place where you go with no expectations of anything. You just get to be yourself and be around the kind of people that you want to be around. So that doesn't have to be a business thing. It could be a knitting thing. It could be a gaming thing. It could be all sorts of these different places. That also, again, takes a lot of self-awareness for you to understand where you are at and what you need right now out of life. Because I guarantee you there's other people out there who are in the exact same place as you that need the exact same things as you. You just maybe don't know where to find them. And what Skool is great at is being able to kind of uncover and give you those kinds of things. And I've noticed that with some specific communities on Skool that are more around fun and things like that, like the GIF community and all of Joe's communities, those kinds of things where this isn't necessarily going to make some business move or make me a ton of money, but I really enjoy just like memeing with people and having fun and being a part of this. And what I love so much about what Skool does is that it gives you the ability to not only find your third place, but create it if you don't see it or want it. And that's the best thing about community building is if you want it and you try to solve your own problem, like I want to talk with more people about this game, or I want to talk with people about horror movies, or I want to just screw around and have fun. It doesn't always have to be around those kinds of things. Does that land in terms of like where you were thinking about it? Because how I feel about kind of navigating those spaces is you need to have a self-awareness for what third place you need. Or maybe second place, right? Like you need to be able to work on these kinds of things with these kinds of people. The good thing about communities and the bad thing about where we're going is that That second place has been eroding for decades now. And the third place has been eroding for almost a century, right? But you think about the Beatles singing in the 60s, right? Look at all the lonely people. People are only getting lonelier. And so having a community and finding these places where, again, it could be your second place, it could be your third place, but that's something that means and matters to you and what you're needing in this moment. Sometimes the best thing for you right now is to laugh. And then other times the best thing might be, hey, I need to work on traffic and lead generation. Or I want to be around other school community owners, right? The right kinds of groups. There could be investments that could be a part of that. But having that third place is fundamental. And so I myself and so many others never really take the time to think about, okay, I've got my home, I've got my work. What is this other thing that I want and need? Where could I find more of those? And for me, I feel like I found 5 really good third places for me to go outside of those primary things that as a human being, right, we all need those. And a lot of people right now do not have that. A Gallup survey of over 142 different countries basically equated to half of all adults are feeling social isolation, like the stuff that physically does damage to you. 15 cigarettes a day is the equivalent of that level of physical damage. So communities matter now more than ever, and they are going to continue to grow in terms of importance. Is that kind of in the area you were looking at?
Yeah. How are you helping to build communities, Matt?
I am helping build communities right now by really talking to my individual ICP. The ideal client for me right now that I resonate with is going to be educational YouTubers who are obsessed with marketing. And how I'm helping them build communities, I'm finding right now, is that most of these folks have the audience and the attention, but they don't know how to build the offer. Or maybe they have something that isn't working really well because that offer doesn't make the most sense. So my obsession with community building is really coming forward, and I'm involved in a lot of school communities. I work with some school communities and some other communities outside of school as well. But how I want to help build is documenting this journey as well and sharing what I am learning about this, because as I've mentioned a few times, the ability to create, build, manage, run a community is going to be the most valuable thing that anybody could have here going over in the future. So I'm early in this journey. I actually just left my corporate job at Monday.com about like 50 days ago. So it's pretty fresh in that regard. And what I'm doing to build this up right now is I am talking to as many of those people that fit into that profile as I can to deeply understand their problems. And for example, one guy, I talked with him for about 3 hours. We built this up. He had about 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. His name's Frey Chu, and he created his community. And within like a week and a half, he had over 800 people in it.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, he was in that place where he didn't even know if he wanted to do it. And he didn't understand all of these different mechanisms of how to make this offer work and go through this. He would have figured it out. He's a smart guy. But we were able to shorten that gap from what could have been hundreds of hours down to 3. So that's really where I'm focusing right now. And I'm excited to see what this looks like in the future, because I'm going through this journey with a lot of other folks right now where they're trying their best to figure it out. But how I help right now is hopping on the phone and just really understanding intimately what is their specific bottleneck. And then I get to use those decades of corporate experience to say, here's the blueprint. This is what it looks like. Let's focus on trying this out and then learn from the data.
Matt, it's been really fun talking with you. I'm super excited for our next conversation because there's so much more that we could dive into with Skool.
Absolutely. It's super good privilege, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. And if you see my icon on Skool, reach out to me. I'm always looking to connect and talk with more schoolers.